Hello class, welcome to my presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about compassion satisfaction and compassion fatigue when it comes to carrying out crisis work specifically, but it's also going to cover a broader range of work environments in which it's relevant. But my primary focus here is to talk about the impact that compassion fatigue has on my current internship site, Project Help, and we are a rape and crisis response center. And so this presentation was actually made for them, and I'm going to be giving it to them as well. So it was a nice opportunity to be able to do that. So I'm going to begin with the purpose of my presentation and just a review of the different topics that I'm going to be talking about and what my role as a consultant is today. And it's basically to provide psychoeducation tools and techniques for helping crisis workers cope with stressors that are associated with carrying out crisis work, and also to draw out strengths and areas of expertise that are already possessed by a lot of the crisis workers that have been in the field for a long time. But regardless of the amount of time that you've been there, compassion fatigue does not discriminate. So I'll be providing definitions of compassion fatigue, secondary traumatic stress, and vicarious traumatization, and some of the professional roles at Project Help and how client trauma exposure impacts those roles. I'm going to talk about measured levels of compassion satisfaction using the quality of life survey, and I'm going to make some points on growth and resiliency and talk about some of the current research surrounding compassion fatigue and compassion satisfaction, and also talk about self-care and provide some ideas for making a self-care plan and developing some coping techniques and tools to increase your compassion satisfaction at your workplace. So there are three definitions that were prevalent throughout the research, and they all sort of overlap, but there's some slight differences. So compassion fatigue is a state of distress experienced by crisis workers that combines burnout and secondary traumatic stress. Secondary traumatic stress occurs when directly hearing about the trauma of another person that they've experienced and having symptomatic reactions, similar to those PTSD symptoms, like including avoidance of people, places, and things that remind the worker of the secondary traumatic experience or the learned experience that they were exposed to through that client's trauma narrative. And vicarious traumatization occurs when the crisis worker experiences transformations of their own worldviews and cognitive schemas as a result of that client trauma exposure. Empathy-based stress among helping professionals working in crisis-focused agencies is a combination of trauma exposure and the experience of empathy that results in stressors that can cause adverse reactions and work-related outcomes. So some of these stressors can accumulate over time, some of them can be punctuated, and so there's a range of that kind of stress depending on the level of severity of the trauma, the nature of it, and the helping professionals that most often experience compassion fatigue, obviously, counselors, psychotherapists, mental health advocates, and also social workers, nurses, people who work in hospitals, EMT responders, police officers, news media reporters. Uh, there's a lot of professions that do empathy-based work or that are exposed to traumatic events, natural disasters, school shootings, people who work in school settings. And so providing regularly scheduled consultation and training on how to cope with compassion fatigue and secondary trauma is essential for all of these workers. And it's important to normalize and validate their feelings as normal reactions to exposure to trauma. It's also important to empower them with the coping tools that they need to alleviate, strengthen, and empower them in carrying out their work.